news that we can share with you from our NeuroMaker team, that we have an upcoming way where students can get involved with brain-computer interface technologies. So I'm going to give you a full introduction to what we're coming out with these days. You can see some teasers up on the page right now. So what you'll see is a little sneak peek into some of the new products that we're developing so that students can learn about becoming a brain-computer interface scientist or engineer. So we've come up with a whole package of curriculum, hardware, and a bunch of other things. So I'm just going to get right ahead and get started, and we will see what you all want to learn today. So in case you have any questions, one of my colleagues, Brett, is in the chat group. Feel free to jump in there at any time with a question. We'll try to answer those in real time. I also have some time at the end of this presentation where we can do some more formal Q&A in case there's anything extra that we have to handle. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into it. So what we're going to do today is about 25 minutes or so of material. We'll have plenty of time to answer any of your questions and go through anything else that you would like. So I'm going to introduce you to myself, our organization. I know many of you out there already know about us, but in case you don't, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to us, along with a quick introduction to BCI technology. I know this is one of those things that have been thrown around there. There might be some people out there who are interested in this and want to know a little bit more. So I'll do a real quick description of what that looks like. Then I'm going to jump into a little bit more of what our product is itself. So what kind of hardware is included, what kind of curriculum is there, what kind of projects will people be working on. So I'll have some time for that. And then there's no better way to experience this than to see it yourself. So I am going to walk you through a part of our first lesson. So I've condensed it so that I can get it done in a little under 20 minutes. Then I also have an example of 2 of the programs that we run that come with this technology, so you can get a feel for what's included too. There's going to be a whole lot that I'm not going to be able to demo today. So we'll have lots more sessions and media and experiences for you all over the next couple of months so you can learn more about that. But we'll certainly be able to uncover some of the fun things involved with this and some things that you can get involved with too. So let's get started. All right, so introduction. So who am I? I know I might have spoken with some of you before, but just in case you don't know me, my name is Bannish. I've been running different STEM education programs for the past 8 years or so. I'm a FIRST alumni, in case any of you out there are also involved with FIRST or robotics. I actually used to work with that program in China for a long time. And since then, I've been really working on how can we find different ways where we can engage students with real world experiences. And my time here at Brainco, particularly within our STEM education NeuroMaker group, has been fantastic because we have all the bells and whistles and fun stuff in our lab, and we have all kinds of different ways that we can share that experience with students. So some of these things you might be aware of already, but we're going to be coming out with all sorts of different tools so that students can engage with us on a BCI level as well. In case you don't know about us here at Brainco, we were incubated in the Harvard iLab about 6 years ago. By Nanalyze, we were rated to be one of the top 10 global brain-machine interface companies. It's a growing field now. I'll be describing a little bit more of that in just a moment. But you can see it, all kinds of different media that we have in the past. We've been featured in publications by MIT and NASA. So we work with the MIT Media Lab on a number of different initiatives to engage BCI within learning spaces and to improve study efficacy. We've been featured on the NASA website as a way for people to conduct neurofeedback training, which is also a key part of BCI technology. And we've also been all over the EdTech world. So ISTE named us the most innovative EdTech startup. We've won all kinds of other awards. There's a lot of really smart nerds in this organization, and there's all kinds of fun tech to play with. And one of the pieces of technology that you might be aware of is our EMG-powered prosthetic hand. So this is our brain robotics hand. And just in case you haven't seen this yet, you'll notice that this prosthetic is a lot more special than maybe something you've seen from Captain Hook. What's actually on the amputee's arm right there are special sensors that go on the amputee's arm, and they can actually detect muscle signals. And those muscle signals are translated through our AI algorithms and turn into specific movements that an amputee can control using their own natural body signals. So there's all kinds of fun things that you can unpack there to make a really interesting STEM experience. So one of the things that we've put together in the past is a way for students to experience that with our NeuroMaker hand. Some of you might be aware of it. Our actual prosthetic actually won the Time Magazine Best 100 Inventions of 2019. And what we saw is a great opportunity to unpack all this knowledge into a really comprehensive STEM set. So what we did was we took all those biomechanical capabilities of our prosthetic, the different control elements that students would have to put together with their own hardware, and all those different other programming and AI materials, and put them into a STEM solution that is within our hand. So you can think of this as a student who wants to really get a hands-on approach to authentic learning frameworks within this kind of career meets technology project. We made this available with our NeuroMaker hand. So we took that prosthetics technology straight out of the lab and into students' hands. And now the great tie-in that we have as well is you can think of our organization as being able to apply brain-computer interface technology in a number of different consumer or medical applications. So this prosthetic, of course, is more of a biomedical application. And we thought it was only fitting for us to also have something available for our students if they want to unpack the mysteries of BCI itself. So that's what you're going to be seeing here today. So just like we were able to give students this experience with our hand, we wanted to give students an experience with this BCI technology as well. So before I go into some of the things that we do with BCI technology, I want to make sure that we have a common definition for all this. So BCI, also called BMI. So sometimes you hear brain-machine interface or brain-computer interface. There's lots of acronyms out there. That won't be the last to hear of these either. You can really think of it as a way for different signals from your nervous system, in this case your brain, to be processed by some kind of hardware and technology. So oftentimes it's some kind of a receiver that can handle some kind of analog signal, convert that into something digital, and put that into some kind of device for an output. So in its most simple form, there's ways where different sensors can pick up your brainwave activity that can then be translated through some kind of a device, and then you're able to manipulate those signals with some kind of a computer. So that forms the basis of any kind of BCI technology. So it's very similar to what you saw there with that prosthetic just now. There's also many other applications for this in healthcare, and a lot of things that we work on in the lab as well. So it's also one of those technologies that's really getting up there on the global stage. So even as far back as 2013, governments around the world have really shifted their focus towards investing resources in this kind of technology. So we've handpicked a few of them here. There's the USA Brain Initiative, the Australia Brain Initiative, the European Human Brain Project. Investment is starting to hit some big dollars. So by this point, it's already surpassed $10 billion in R&D, and it's attracted some really high-level people to get involved with this. So for example, you may have heard of Elon Musk out there working with Neuralink. So we all know that Elon Musk has lots of very interesting ways of approaching technology, and he really sees this kind of technology as a way to keep us at pace with AI developments so that human beings will be able to take on some of those AI technologies for our own good in ways that we can augment ourselves. So there are some really high-level BMI technologies being developed there. In his case, there's lots of really interesting surgical things. Of course, that's not what we're going to be doing with students in any time soon. However, there's these really interesting technology elements there, and it's great for students to have an experience of what these key concepts are. Mark Zuckerberg is also heavily involved with this. He actually just acquired a BMI startup not too long ago, which is investigating how different technologies can interpret brain signals so that typing can be done without a keyboard, so that you can be able to process the different brain activity that would happen when you have the initiative to type something, and for that to be translated into some actual brain signal to text converter. Not to mention, Bill Gates has also invested a lot of money into this. Any search into BMI, you'll be able to see a lot of interesting projects. Elon Musk's Neuralink actually had a really interesting webinar about a month and a half ago or so, where they reported on their progress. So there's lots of really interesting things going on there. And I think there's also one of those technologies where it's really starting to hit its stride. And there's more applications of this coming out for medical and consumer applications, so that for people to gain that competency now puts them into a space where in the next decade or so, when this technologies really start to mature, that they'll be able to investigate this brand new world of tech. So it's one of those forefront technologies right up there with the high-level self-driving cars and AI that really has the power to shape a lot of things in this world. So just so you can see a little bit of these things in action. So this is something from a while back. This is kind of the forerunner of BCI back in the 90s. So it's interesting with this video here, you can't see it. However, there's an electrode placed inside the monkey's brain. And what's happening is the monkey's arm has been put into that device on the right. So he wants to eat the banana, but he can't. So he has to learn how the different brain signals that are being processed through these sensors are controlling that artificial limb in the foreground of the camera. So after many different studies of this back in the 90s, the monkey was actually able to control that robotic arm in front of you. So this is one of the first ways that this technology was actually developed in a way that could have some kind of like a motor input. So that's one example of how that happens here. And just to give you an idea of how far this technology has come, I'm going to show you a video of somebody who's a little bit more intelligent than the monkey. Is our company's founder. Hope it doesn't get me in hot water. This is our founder, our company's founder, Mr. Han, who is using that same technology to power two robotic arms. This is straight inside of a lab. So you can see here there's some important elements of BCI being demonstrated. You have some sort of sensor on your head that's all very safe, that can interpret your brain signals, turn that into some kind of a digital signal, and that's picked up by some kind of a device that can lead to some kind of a movement or action. So these are all things that people can program. There's a lot of tools out there now that we've compiled into our coming product that'll be able to have students interact with these things. So there's a lot of really interesting applications of this technology. And moving ahead, so that's a quick look at what BCI is in general. In the first lesson I'm going to demo with you all today, you're going to be able to see a little bit more of what that looks like from a more hands-on point of view. But just to transition from this bigger industry look to our actual product. So what we have is a product called NeuroMaker BCI. And NeuroMaker BCI, you can actually see a quick introduction to it on our new website here. If you go to neuromakerstem.com, you look under our products, you'll be able to see NeuroMaker BCI. And what we really started with this whole project is, just as that prosthetics gave us a really great way to introduce biomedical applications within STEM, this BCI technology gives students a great way to investigate something brand new that meets some really interesting STEM applications. Just to give a little bit of my own personal opinion before I jump into what's on this slide, I worked a lot with robotics in the past, which is a great platform for STEM because you get this great application with hardware, computers, programming, sensors, not to mention that these robots can be used in all kinds of applications, whether it's something moving along a classroom or you have some kind of an arm that can grasp certain different things. I think you can see a lot of interesting corollaries between that concept with BCI as well, because at its core you have a piece of hardware and all kinds of different sensors that can detect different kinds of inputs. And then you can also have those things programmed, so you get a really strong programming application with the kind of data that's coming in, not to mention lots of opportunities to do some higher level things with machine learning and things like that. But then you also get some kind of a really socially conscious, interesting technology that students can use to create lots of other projects. So that's one of the ways that we really want to approach this project as a whole. And what we thought to ourselves was, if we want to bring this product into STEM, so say for instance, we want to inspire the next generation of students to become interested in this technology, gain the basic competencies, not just so that they're ready to approach this in the future, but also that they understand the core tenets of it and some of the bigger social applications, and not to mention build up their own personal interest to a level and their confidence so that this is something they really want to do. So one thing we did a lot with my former work with robotics is, more than anything, making sure that students have the confidence to take these things on. So just like that, we wanted to make sure that the core elements of BCI were demonstrated within our curriculum and product. So that's a long-winded way of saying we've picked these 4 elements that we have put within our curriculum framework. So any aspiring BCI engineer would need to know these 4 things to make up the core of what students learn with our product. So number 1 is the basic neuroscience. So we have a whole unit where students have to learn the basic neuroscience principles behind the brain. So where these different brain signals are coming from, how they're formed in the nerves, how those are translated into some kind of a signal. Because ultimately students have to be able to put that S into STEM, right? So that science piece, so that they understand where this technology is being applied. So second, something that's very unique to BCI, as opposed to some of the other STEM things out there, signal processing is actually a huge part of BCI. So within the technology that we're using, it's called EEG. So you'll see a little bit more of that in just a moment. And what that is taking these different brainwave signals, so taking all this frequency data, being able to sense the differences between voltages on different parts of your brain, and it turns into a lot of messy data. So you're going to have to filter out things like, for instance, your eye blinking, like that's going to create an electric symbol on your scalp that students are going to have to be able to find and be able to remove from the model that they want to create. Also, the different areas of the brain will correlate with different kinds of activities that want to be demonstrated. So students have to have a really strong grasp of being able to process these signals, and that gives students a really interesting way of applying different kinds of Python data science. So if you're out there in the world and you want to engage students more with some different Python data analysis, those different libraries that they have to get involved with, they want to move to maybe a higher college level, this is a way where they can put that into some kind of an interesting real world context. So third, the biggest thing that we want to introduce students to is machine learning. So with all this different data coming in, it gets very messy very fast. And the only real effective way to be able to parse through the data that you want is to apply different kinds of machine learning algorithms to them. So that's a core piece of our curriculum, and students will need to be able to demonstrate that to move forward. And then finally, what I consider to be the most important is that once students have the basic scientific and technology frameworks behind this, they have to really understand the ethical impacts of this tech. So that's not just the neuroethics part of this, to make sure that this technology is used in the benefit of humanity, and it's not something that people are going to use to some kind of a matrix style thing. It's actually really being able to dive into where this technology is most adequately used. So what kinds of ethical decisions somebody have to make when developing it or using it, and not to mention being at the forefront of a new technology. There's a lot of different stuff that students need to understand when it comes to using other people's work. So if they're using different research papers out there, if they're using open source materials, they're going to have to understand the ways that these engineers would be using them. So those are the 4 elements that make up our core piece of curriculum. You can think of those are lodestones for what we do. And the last thing that we do that we make sure is available in this curriculum is lots and lots of hands-on experiences. So students aren't just introduced to all these things, but they also get lots of different ways that they can apply them. All right, and then moving on, we wanted to make sure that we work with some amazing curriculum partners to put this into effect. So actually, we worked in tandem with one of the world's largest BCI nonprofits called Neurotech X. So they actually have chapters all over the world, and over 16,000 different members of this group. If this is something you're interested in, they're a great organization to get in touch with. They have, like I mentioned, chapters all over the world. And more importantly, for what we want to do with students is, not only do we want these students to be engaged and kind of confident in this technology, we want to make sure there's a community that can welcome there too. So not just the scientists and engineers within our group, but also like anybody who's interested around the world. So the curriculum that we put together for our NeuroMaker BCI product is made in tandem with Neurotech X, and they've put together like awesome applications of ways that this could be done. So we had a group of BCI PhDs and a few different of their research assistants that really went beyond the call of duty to put this in a format where we could engage students with this with some higher level BCI technology. Okay, so what exactly is in this curriculum? So I just have a very brief look at it right here. I'm actually in the middle of putting together our official curriculum documents, which we'll have ready by next week. I'll certainly make sure that anybody who's interested in those can get them. We'll have much more detailed explanations of what's in here. However, we like to follow the ISTE frameworks. So really being able to engage students with not just really cut and dry lessons and things like that, but really giving students the competencies where they can bite off different pieces of this tech and apply it into something, and ultimately be able to chart their own path. So what we do is we start off with a Kickstart Learning module where those classes are all set up around what are some fun ways that we can implement BCI, which is actually what I'm going to demo with you today, so you can take a look at it. And then we also have a whole setup guide. So the tools that students will use are going to be those same ones that an actual research scientist would use for BCI. So some higher level Python applications. We have some other virtual environments that students need to set up. So that takes a little bit of time, so we make sure that those elements are all together. And from there, students move into BCI fundamentals, which we separated out into those 4 different important areas. So we have 3 classes on neuroscience and neurotechnology, and each one of these units also has an assessment so that you can make sure that students know when to progress to the next level. And that takes students through the basics of neuroscience, and also has a big description of what kinds of neurotechnology are out there in the world now. Next, we have a whole group of units on signal processing. So this is where we have a crash course into Python data analysis. If students are already using that in the classroom, then they have a great start to jumping into those things. but students also get engaged with what the different brain oscillations are. So what are alpha waves? How do we transform different kinds of frequency data into other pieces that we could work with? Next, now that students have that background in data processing, they'll be able to progress into machine learning. So they're going to build a couple of different machine learning classifiers so they can get those signals that they're looking for. And for each of these, we have lots of activities too. And then finally, now that they have the basis of this technology behind them, they can move into the impact and ethics. So we have some open research projects that they work on to make sure that students understand how this technology is being used and what kind of ethical implications are within that. There's this whole discipline out there called neuroethics. Super interesting. So we have a lot of different frameworks that students can use to dissect those different things. And not to mention, we give them some different ways that they can engage things like GitHub, things like different research out there, so that they can really take in things from the outside world and bring them into the classroom. Then what we do is that once students have these core competencies under their belt, they can move into creating 2 different guided activities. So one is creating what we like to call a sleep detector. So it's kind of cheating with some alpha waves to figure out what kind of brain state that students are in. So for those, we have some like pre-built algorithms that students can use for reference. So it's up to the educator how they want to introduce that to their students. But ultimately what we hope for is these exercises are a way to pull together those 4 different frameworks together into comprehensive projects so that students feel more comfortable doing all these things into one specific project. So we have 2 of those that students can put together with a lot of guidance materials. And then finally, we open up this into all kinds of different projects that students can work on. So we allow students to choose their own challenge. So we have some challenges that are based on creating different algorithms that can perform better than ones that are given to them to find different kinds of brainwave data they're looking for. We have some others where if students aren't so interested in the tech piece of it and want to look at more of the social side, we have different frameworks that students can use to investigate what kinds of ethics are inherent within some kind of a technological application of this. We have different challenges that students can take on in different project packs that they can then use our hardware and software to do. So that's a real quick look at it. We'll have lots more information in the future so that you have a little bit more idea of what is included in there. But that's what it looks like. Now for a little more granular information. So what students are actually going to be using. So students are going to be best suited to use this start with the hardware first. So what students get to interact with is called our Focus One headband. So we have some information about this coming up soon in this presentation, but a quick look at this is this headband has different electrodes on it with a hydrogel on top of it that are completely safe, and it's about 93% as accurate as medical grade devices. So you actually get some really interesting signal quality out of this. And what this does is this can take that initial brainwave data and you can use it in all these different software tools up at the top. So our applications for the moment are all ideally done on some kind of a desktop computer. So what we have ready for launch coming up next month will be ideally used on a Windows device. However, we're building out all kinds of different programs that can be used across other platforms too. And this is actually connected via Wi-Fi. So that it's a wireless connection, and the students can interface with the computer there. And for what the students are actually doing within their classes. So we have those lessons that you saw up at the top are all in Google Slides. We have lesson plans and teacher guides and all those kind of things. They're separated into 25 lessons that are structured on those different elements, and they also give different introductions to the open-ended projects as well. And for the actual programming that happens on these different platforms. So all the programming is in Python. And what we do is just like a biomedical engineering student would do in college or an actual research scientist would use. So a student actually has to set up their own virtual environment with Anaconda. And what that does is that gives you access to lots of other programming tools that you can use. So most of our curriculum is hosted within Jupyter Notebooks, which if you haven't used it before is a great way to show different kinds of programming applications. And then you can add on to some ready-built programs for you already, so that if there are students out there that are new to this kind of Python application, they have a lot of ready stuff that they can use, and they can play around with different code and run it all within that system. Also, We have things like a Spider and a few other plugins that students would use for this programming that would be able to open up some machine learning and advanced processing within that. And what connects all of this is we have our own BCI GUI, which is able to take the brainwave data, turn it into some data files that students can play around with. I'm actually going to demo that for you in just a moment so you can see it yourself. But what the students are ultimately going to be working with are those different data streams that come from that program. So we actually open up a piece of our own research SDK so that the data that students are working with and the programming tools that students are working with really are the ones that a research scientist would. So it's really cool stuff. And I think the best way to show it to you all is just to get started. So I see that I'm already well over time of where I want to be. So I'm just going to jump through this really quickly so you can see some of the applications there and leave plenty of time for questions. So what we do for our first lesson with students is introduce them to the course, a little bit about Neuro Technology and BCI, and then take them through some fun activities as well. So within this lecture, my students will be using that headband that you saw, along with plenty of lecture slides and hands-on activities. I will be giving demos of these in the future, so if it's something you're interested in previewing, we'll certainly make sure that you have some documents that you can review. So we have a quick intro to Neuro Technology. There's all kinds of interesting applications of this kind of stuff that go from reading muscle signals to things with your spinal cord. However, what we're going to focus on with our curriculum is everything focused with the brain, right? And there's plenty to do there. There's lots of different signals that happen across all kinds of different frequency bands that can be applied to different situations. So this whole technology actually started because of enabling people who are locked into being unable to communicate with others. So people who are severely paralyzed or were thought to be brain dead in some form. This was actually used originally with surgical and non-surgical options to see what was going on inside of a patient's brain. Within that process of understanding what's going on there is just like we were saying before. So the three elements of BCI that we really focus on so that students can understand this technology is number one, collecting those brain signals, right? And that first part of it is using what we call EEG, so electroencephalography, which is a fancy way of saying we put a sensor on your head and your brain waves are powerful enough where they can actually be read with special sensors right on your scalp. So of course, like I mentioned earlier, you have to do a little bit of filtering to make sure that you're getting the right signals that you want. However, the first stage of this is making sure that you can understand how to collect those right signals. The second is making sure that you can interpret them to get the data that you want, right? So in here we're using machine learning and deep learning and all kinds of different algorithms that we have to go through. And this makes sure that the data that you're focusing on is the ones that's most relevant for what you want to use. And finally, we want to output a command. So for most of the work that's in this curriculum, it's going to be outputting different kinds of data that you're looking for. So it's maybe modeling something with some kind of a graph or being able to detect certain kinds of signals based on some kind of activity that you would do. We have some simple ways of doing that, but ultimately you want this to be able to output into something else. So some of the examples that you'll be able to see here today is gaming. So there's actually a really cool gaming community based around BCI. So in a moment, I'm going to demo for you some of the ways that you can control BCI, your brain waves to control an actual RC Kart. So we have like a little open source version of Mario Kart you can think of that you can power with your brain waves, which I'm going to demo for you in just a moment. So that's one of the things that students can really resonate with and get interested in. The second, as I mentioned, those people who are locked up and want to communicate with people. So within our Neuro Technology unit, we really investigate the different kinds of invasive or non-invasive ways that these patients have been treated. And then finally, there's all kinds of different neural prosthetics. So we have lots of really interesting videos about these. Our company itself focuses a lot in this space where there's different ways that you can have the kind of signals that are in your brain translated and turned into some kind of movement. So for some people, that's actually engaging your actual muscles. For others, that's engaging a different piece of hardware. There's a whole really interesting application of this technology. So the headband that we use here, I already covered some basics of that. You can see here, it's very light. It can fit around the students' heads quite easily. You just want to make sure that the sensors here don't get in the way of your hair. And just so long as the sensors are on your scalp, you'll be able to pick up those signals. So this is Wi-Fi enabled. It works best on a WPA network. However, there's different ways that we can work on different networks as well too. All right, so the moment you've all been waiting for, I've talked to you a lot. I'm going to set up some of the more interactive pieces of this so you can see it in motion. And while I am doing that, I am also going to stop sharing my screen while I get that ready and take a look at the questions as well. All right. So I'm going to get my program set up. So I'm going to let you take a look into my brain right now. All right, and go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so you can all see this application here. So this is our main application that we use to connect our headband to our computer. All right, so we are connected. I'm gonna make sure that we're set up here. So I might need to adjust this a little bit if you can be very patient with me. Perfect. All right, so the data will be coming in just a moment. At the moment, these applications are run from a desktop. So these are things that you would install. We're going to be developing lots of other things too, but at this moment in time, these are all things that you would install on your device. Okay, so the first way that we engage our students here is, so we have 4 different readings that are delineated through line graphs. We have some other things at the bottom here too. You probably have heard of some of these things, right? Like alpha waves. You might have heard of gamma and beta and all those different things. So this is where students actually get access to our real research level SDK. So they're able to see exactly what kind of brainwave data comes out in real time. So every second there's a new reading that is processed. So we've all heard of alpha waves before. These are going to be the most receptive to different kinds of brain activity. So if I try to calm down a little bit here, I think we can keep that line relatively stable. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, so it's stabling out a little bit. And if you do things like blink, that alpha wave is going to change a lot. Yeah, so you can see it there. Perfect. So there's many applications that we can work on from there. And what students also get access to are things like our attention algorithm, our meditation algorithm, and our raw EEG outputs. So what students work with in our curriculum are being able to really translate this kind of raw analog EEG signal. So you can see all the different pieces that come out through our sensors and put on different algorithms so that they can create their own applications. So 2 of these are already ready built. So we actually use these within our consumer applications. So one of these takes a mix of all these different signals that you see here and turns those into an attention score. So you can see it goes from 0 to 100. So this is actually an index that our researchers and our individuals came up with from our own research. And what this does is it takes in your brain data and it assesses how attentive you are at a certain task. In particular, it's about what your cognitive load looks like. So if you think of doing things like a really difficult math problem and being super focused in on it for a long time, you're going to see that attention score rise. You're probably not going to see a lot of movement on this right now because I'm very distracted speaking with you all. However, if I were to do some kind of mental math and work with things like that, you'll see this number go up. I will also say I am absolutely terrible at demoing our attention algorithm. I think I need to do some attention training on my own. However, through these different applications, students can put together algorithms like this. Also, they can put together something like a meditation algorithm. So just like we worked with our attention one, we also made a scale of 0 to 100 on how relaxed someone is. So based on the different brainwave signals that are coming in, you can actually measure how you can think of it as like at peace or at rest somebody's mind is. So if you think of like meditating and clearing your mind, you'll be able to make these numbers go up and down too. So this is based on, so for our attention, right, most attentive is at 100, least attentive is at a 0. That's the index that we came up with. And on that same note, our meditation is the same way as well. So someone very meditative will go up to 100, and somebody not so much will go to 0. And like I was saying before, what students really need to work with are these raw signals. So these raw signals are everything that's coming through our sensors here, and that really forms the meat of what students go through in this curriculum, is being able to apply different filters and different programming applications so that they can turn these raw signals into different algorithms like this. Yes, so we are working on lots of different ways that we could run this on a server and have that work out to a Chromebook and things like that. So those are, I don't have the final word on that yet, but we will absolutely have that ready very soon. So you're completely right, Del. Okay, so I'm going to try to demo. I'm going to see if I can meditate for you all. I feel like anybody who has programmed in front of someone else, or anyone who has done any kind of live demonstration of something, always knows that they're signing up for something dangerous when they try to show something to somebody, but I'm going to do the best I can. So let's see if I can make that meditation go up. So if I relax my mind, really get into my own, in my own space, we should see that number go up. So let's see if I can do it. There we go. Yes, so you can see, so I did cheat a little bit and open my eyes a little bit so I could see what was going on and see how much I was embarrassing myself on camera, much like anybody demoing technology would do. But you can see here that many times these attention and meditation indexes will be inversed, so that attention going down will often be correlated with meditation going up. So I did see that go on for some portion there. This is something really fun that students can do for their own research-based applications. We have different units where students can actually create their own experiments with coming up with different ways to put themselves in different states beyond just the programming inherent in here. So that's one example of what these little basic technologies look like. So what students end up doing with a lot of their programming applications is, you can see here that we can collect this data in real time, so that students can do different activities and they can run that data into whatever algorithms they're working with. So you can see here I just started it, and when I stop it, we'll be able to get some results, and that will filter into here. So I believe this might not have been the one I just generated, but you can see here we can generate all these different signals that somebody would have from this application. And any of your students that are working with any kind of Python data collection or analysis, you can think of it as, you know, here's where they can get their data from and really use it into some kind of an interesting application. So and they can take this and they can use it within our Jupyter Notebooks activities. They can have this applied to some other kind of a device that they want to control, but they have access to the data that's produced within this program. So that is one look at that. And what I thought would be a nice way to wrap this up is show you one of the more fun things that we have available. So as I mentioned, we do have a little Mario Kart simulator where we can actually control the speed of a virtual car with our brainwave data. So I'm going to set that up right now. Just a moment. Yeah, so I was going to detect that device. Let's wait till we get a good signal. All right, perfect. So what you are going to see here is a simple racing game that we've developed. So students will, this is one of the ways that we like to engage students with BCI to begin with, like something fun. You'll see that come through here. So it is a racing game. So the speed of the cart will be controlled by how focused I am from that focused algorithm that you just saw. I'm going to be very distracted and nervous, so my focus will probably be very low. So we're just going to let that load, and you will see that come in just a moment. So there's going to be, I'm on a busy network here, so there might be a little bit of lag. So we just hold on a moment, and we'll get that moving again. There we go. So this should go. There we go. Yep. So I'm going to try to concentrate. So as I said before, I am probably the worst person in the world to demonstrate how my attention levels come through. However, for the sake of you all and for the pursuit of better BCI technology for the world, I have gratefully volunteered my services so that you can see how this works. And so I'm getting a little bit more attentive now, doing the best I can to focus.
You can do it, Andrew. You're number one, man. You got this.
I got some boosts, so I'm going to use those. So in case, I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, that number that you see on the right, that 19 at the moment, is what my current attention score through our attention algorithm is detecting at the moment. It looks like I finally passed the finish line. Yes. So if you are very attentive people and you can get your focus scores up real high, I'm certain you can beat my time. We like to use this as a really fun activity for students to understand how this technology can be interacted with, and for them to really see some kind of a fun application of this tech. So it's just a fun little game, and we use that to get students hyped up in the beginning. So you have just seen my brainwaves control a virtual car. And with that, I think I've talked to you plenty by now. I'm going to keep my program running so you can see just how attentive or meditative I am while I'm answering your questions. However, if you have any extra questions for me right now, I'd be happy to answer them. Feel free to type them in our Q&A or anything else that you'd like to know, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. For this one, the steering was actually done with my keyboard. So actually, one of the fun applications that we see of this is for one student to be focused on focusing. So we have, if they want to do something like mental math, if they want to do something like read or maybe count backwards by 3 from 300, as concentrated as they can get, you'll get those focus scores up very high, and then another student can steer. It's also a fun way that you can get some more collaboration.
Hey, Andrew, who are some of the big companies and partners who are
Yes.
So,
so this algorithm that you saw in the SDK is actually used by a number of different high-level organizations. So you can see here this attention algorithm is used by people like Formula One Medicine and the US Olympic team. So I believe we work with the handball team. We work with archery teams from around the world. and they use this headband along with this SDK in order to do their own cognitive training. So you can imagine that a Formula One racer would need to be very used to being in a high flow state. So being able to, tune out the rest of the world and focus on the task at hand. So they actually use this kind of technology. This really is like the inside out version of the technology that our key partners work with, so that they can actually do better at their job. So NASA astronauts do this kind of training. The ones that we work with most closely, as mentioned, are Formula One racers. We've been working with them for quite a few years now, and we can actually use those studies to have students conduct their own experiments with this kind of training, so they can see not just the technology and programming side of this, but also the real application of it. So if you were to guide somebody through the use of this technology, how would you make it more applicable for somebody using it? This is also, on a more anecdotal note, it's also been a really interesting way to engage students with maybe some kind of, so for instance, my brother actually has a mild form of Asperger's, and that you can actually notice through different ways that he can focus in on different things. You can get different kind of readings. So you can really engage a wider student community into these kind of things and show off some skills that maybe they couldn't demonstrate in other ways. All right, so do we have any more questions or comments that I can do for you all today? Yeah, so I'll also say, while everybody's on the line here, we are going to be having the first release of this product towards the end of January. So it's actually going to correlate with our NeuroMaker Challenge award ceremony. We're going to be giving out $4,500 to students that are engaged with our NeuroMaker hand to build projects that are judged by our actual engineers. And then at that same time, we're going to demo a little bit more of this technology. You're going to be seeing a lot more materials come out over the next month on what our curriculum looks like, what this looks like in action, some other tech aspects that we can work with. And then you'll have a lot more information that you can work with there. But we want to make sure that you know what's out there and that you can get excited. This is our first real full foray into teaching this from a STEM perspective. So it's something that I'm certainly really interested in. And also, we'll make sure that everybody who registered for this webinar will have special promotions to get their hands on this product when it gets released. So just by registering for this, we have your information. We'll be able to send you out that kind of promotion. But we do like to thank you all who have taken time out of their schedule to be a part of this, and we'll certainly make sure that you get first access to that.
Andrew, we have another question.
Okay, we got another question from Dell. Yes, so our headbands, so as I mentioned, we will have some promotions going out so that when you use these materials, you'll get different kinds of ways to get into this kind of technology. But this is all based on the device, so that the device itself retails at $350, and it comes with all the curriculum that comes with our solution, along with all the software that you saw originally. And not to mention, it gives students access to our creative challenge, so that if they do want to create their own applications of this technology, they can do that and then submit it to our actual engineers for review and use it as like a capstone project. So they will be coming out with the full sales sheet, so you can see everything that comes with that solution, but it's all bundled into that one hardware price.
Andrew, I have another question. What classroom do you see this technology being used in?
All right. So we will actually be doing another one of these webinars next week on, I believe it's next Wednesday. And so if there's anybody else who is interested in learning more live, we'll be having a similar webinar just like this. It'll be featured on our neuromakerstem.com website. We'll also make sure that all of you who were registered onto this webinar get access to our special promotions for this and any other materials that you might find of interest. But I will give you all another minute just to see if there's anything else that I can answer for you today. Otherwise, I can certainly be available for any questions afterwards. I will also say that anybody who's looking to implement this in an academic place. I think that this aligns best with some students who have probably like at least 2 to 3 years of Python under their belt. So we've certainly seen a lot of correlations with how this can be wrapped up into a high school level programming class. So if you are engaging, if you're running an AP computer science class and you want students to have a more interesting application of the skills that they've worked so hard to learn, this gives students access to some really interesting, cool technology that they can use to build brand new things. As I mentioned before, this curriculum was developed by BCI scientists at the university level. So we've made lots of efforts to make sure that it's accessible to any students or at the high school level too. But if you want to engage students at a higher level, I think it's a great way to do this. There's also other applications if you're doing things like any kind of Python modeling, if you're doing any kind of like higher level computer science activities, you can find a lot of applications for this kit there. Okay, great. So I appreciate everyone taking the time. Oh, we got another question here. So our curriculum is separated out into 25 different lessons. So those include assessments, open-ended projects. I think what you can reasonably expect from this is to fill at least a half a semester. If you want to take full advantage of everything that's in there, particularly our open-ended projects, and if you want to create your own capstone projects, it could absolutely fill up a whole semester too. So like anywhere that sits between there would be your best bet. I think working this in a makerspace would also be a great way to do this too. The way that Jupyter notebooks are set up is a great way for any makerspaces out there. If students want to be active on a device in a makerspace and they want to apply some other technologies that are there too, this is another good way to have students interact with something maybe not so formalized within an actual classroom structure. You can do a lot of things in an open-ended environment, particularly with our more open-ended activities. You can customize it in a lot of different ways too. And once we have those academic materials come out next week, you'll be able to get a full idea of what that looks like. Yes, I think people who are looking to get involved with computer science at an entry level, I mean, the curriculum itself is all based within Python. You're going to be working, you're going to have to set up a virtual environment. You're going to want to be, we do have some guides for students to get a crash course in data science in Python, along with some guides into applying machine learning. But I think that you're probably going to have, as long as somebody in the room can work through a lot of those things, I think that'll give students the best experience. But we certainly have many guides available so that students will have those resources available if they run into some stumbling blocks with the programming. I think those that are going to make the most of this are going to be the ones that have that natural drive to learn these things and use them. So any way that you can combine those different things for anybody who's interested in computer science could work well with this product. And on that note too, we also have integration of our headband that you see here with our NeuroMaker hand. So we do have a downloadable program that students can use to take that attention level that you saw within the virtual racing game that you saw and apply that to their actual NeuroMaker hardware. So if you are looking at crossing the chasm from programming or the more computer level areas of this BCI technology to work on an actual piece of hardware, there's a great bridge between this and the NeuroMaker hand. So if you are looking at finding a really interesting application of moving that hand with this hardware, you can do that too. Okay. Minimum requirements. We will have the minimum requirements available for this upon release. I will certainly say that you are going to have to set up your own virtual environment. So you're going to need to have something. We've ran this in beta testing with a few students who had like a 10-year-old laptop that hasn't been run in a long time. And I think if you're doing, like any kind of like higher level classifier on a device like that, you might run into a little bit of lag. But I think any kind of, these days, any kind of basic laptop that can run like a higher level program won't have an issue with this. I don't have the minimum requirements right now, but we'll have that available upon release. You bet. All right, so I'll hang around here for a couple more minutes. See, there's still some people in here that I haven't bored away just yet. Okay, well, it's been almost an hour. And I want to thank you all for your time. If you have any other questions, you can find our contact information on our website, neuromakerstem.com. There, you can get in touch with us on any other questions that you have here. We'll be sending out more materials and promotional things for everybody who registered to this webinar. I do want to thank you all for taking the time to meet with us on this. I know that we're all getting sick of doing everything online. I'm certainly very excited to get back in the classroom working with people, but we're doing the best that we can now. I'm happy to answer other questions that you have in the future. And until then, I'll see you soon. So thank you everyone for your time. And I hope you find this technology just as exciting as I do. So with that, I will leave you all. All right, goodbye everyone.